Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Transform Your Life with Kellie and Lisa. I am Kellie. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning.
You know, we were just talking before the show. A lot of people right now are dealing with first day of school kind of stuff, dropping kids off and all of those kinds of things. So all of you out there who are listening who are parents and you're going through this, we feel your pain. Just wanted to get that out there. It's always chaotic. The first days of school. First weeks of school actually are very chaotic. So thank you for joining us in spite of all of the drama and chaos that the first weeks of school bring around. Our topic today is really a great one for a lot of people. You know, when we talk about seeing universal signs, you know, it kind of means something a little bit different to everyone, but you really need to learn to notice your own signs, those signs that are directed at you. It can be anything. It can be animals. It can be a song on the radio. It can be just about anything. One of the things that we often don't recognize as a sign are those signs that other people give us. You know, it's pretty common knowledge at this point that if you keep seeing, you know, butterflies can be messengers from heaven. It can be, you know, if you find random things that were important to a loved one. I know a friend of mine whose grandfather grew prize-winning roses. When she was feeling really upset and was really missing him, she would smell roses, or she would find a rose in a bizarre location. And those, you know, were signs from her grandfather that he was with her. But when it's people, you know, people give off signs all the time. Those are really, really, really important to look at and say, hey, what's, you know, is this a sign? Sometimes we all have bad days. And you can't say, well, because one person was screaming and yelling at work one time, that makes them a bad person, and that's a sign that you shouldn't trust them. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is there are little subtle things, little subtle clues that people give off as to who they really are. And sometimes you need to just walk away. And sometimes we don't walk away and we get ourselves into situations that could have been completely avoided had we seen those signs. So that's our topic. Lisa, I kind of want to see your take on this. I want to hear your take on this. Looking at like a new person that you don't know, what are some of the things that you've noticed that tell you you're not going to really have a great relationship with a person?
A lot of what I pick up on is, do I like the way you talk? And I know that sounds really snobby, but sometimes the voice of a person, I know that I'm going to have to keep them at arm's length just because the voice doesn't mesh with me. And then sometimes it's really what is coming out of your mouth, and does it sound genuine, or does it sound like you're really laying it out, like, you know, just really pouring it on thick? You know, a lot of times that you can pick up just on how, you know, how a person talks, what they say. And I'm not talking about, are they grammatically correct? Are they making proper sentences? Not that at all. It's really the voice and are they coming across as trying to hide something, or not being really open and honest just in their voice? A lot of people say the eyes are that way, you know, but I also feel the voice can be that way too.
I agree with that. And when you touched on something, it's kind of what's coming out of what they're saying too. Sometimes people get into a victim mode. They get stuck in that oh, poor me, woe is me, everything happens to me. And everyone goes there from time to time. But when it's someone who it constantly lives there. And every time you talk to them, they're having, something else has happened to them. Maybe that's a time to look at, this is somebody I really don't need to form a close relationship with. Maybe it's someone I need to hold at arm's length, because that's really kind of a pet peeve that I have, is the victim mentality, because I think we all make our own lives. Our thoughts create our actions, create our lives. And when you have someone who is in perpetual victim mode, that's a sign for me. And just like everyone else, I have ignored those signs, and it's come back to bite me. But that's just one of them. There are other signs people give off as well. A big one that I've seen clients wrestle with are when you have that friend who says they're doing all of this stuff. They're making the calls. In this context, it was a real estate company. And it wasn't my real estate company. It was another real estate company. But anyway, they had these new agents. And the new agents, this one in particular, was saying, I'm making these cold calls. I'm farming my neighborhood. I've got my cards printed. All of these things that she was saying she did, and yet it never resulted in any listings or any transactions at all. And finally, the broker came to me and said, what do I do about this situation? Because it's become clear to me that she is not really following through. And ultimately, that agent left that company. And about 6 months later, a different broker came to me and said, okay, I've got this agent, and she's saying she's doing all these things and nothing is happening. So those kinds of signs where someone is saying they're doing what they're supposed to do and they're moving forward, and yet there's never any indication of any kind of results, that's a really strong sign that that's not a person you want to go into business with. If someone keeps coming up with, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and yet all the signs say that they're not doing it, not a good business partner. Maybe a fantastic person, maybe a great person to go out and party with or catch a movie with, but not a great business person. What do you think about that? Have you seen that?
Yes. And mine wasn't so much in the business aspect as it was, going to school and being in group projects. So, and in a case like that, sometimes you can't walk away. You don't want a failing grade, but that doesn't mean that there has to be any sort of connection after the fact. So I've seen that.
Yeah, that one really kind of hurts other people too. If it's someone that's playing the victim card all the time and, they're really only hurting themselves. But when you're in a group project with someone who is just not stepping up to the plate, that really hurts everyone else too. That's a really difficult situation to be in when it's an employee, or like in this instance that I gave, a real estate company where it was an independent contractor agent. You can just say, this isn't working out. We need to go our separate ways. But when you're kind of tied to them with a big project like that, that's kind of a really, really rough one. Sometimes too, and this kind of goes along with that because that's what happened to this particular agent, and I'm sure it probably ultimately happened to the person in your group project, is sometimes people's reputations precede them, and we kind of ignore those signs. In the case of the second broker who called me, she had heard from the first broker that this was not a great agent, and yet she hired her anyway. And I know we've all had that person in our lives where we've heard things from multiple sources that this is the way they are, this is the way they are, this is the way we are. And we've said, no. Everyone has a different, there's two sides to every story. Everyone has a different experience. And then it turns out that person is exactly the way all those people said they are. So, yeah, that kind of, that's a rough one too. So how do you move past that? I know a lot of times when we ignore signs, whether it's with people or with opportunities or with our health, it kind of really, we beat ourselves up a lot. So how do we get past that? How do we let that go? Because that's a really tough one. I've wrestled with that one several times myself, is how do you stop beating yourself up? Because, hindsight always has 20/20 vision. That's a really old saying that I've heard a bazillion times. But it's kind of true. It's really easy once something has happened to look back and say, oh, that was a sign, that was a sign, that was a sign. Oh, wow, I'm an idiot, therefore I'm going to beat myself up. So how do we not do that?
I don't think you don't not beat yourself up. And I know I used a double negative, sue me. But I think that as time goes on, you stop beating yourself up as much. And it's not necessarily that one, like you face this one situation and then 5 years down the road you face a similar situation, and so you're not going to beat yourself up as much as you did with the first situation. I think it's just that beating yourself up over any particular situation, as the days go on, you just kind of stop doing it less and less. I would love to know the secret formula for doing it faster. Because sometimes it comes up later and you still beat yourself up for it. It's like, I was so stupid. Why did I do that? It was interesting. We have a big project that you and I are on together, and it's, God, when can we announce this project? It's so
I know,
exciting.
it's really exciting.
And I wrote something for this project, and it was interesting because this is a letter that I wrote to somebody over 10 years ago. And within the last few days, I read a lot of articles, and particularly with the domestic violence / abuse situation. And I do read a lot of articles on that. And I had never, maybe about a year ago, I heard the term gaslighting, but it didn't connect. It didn't register. So a few days ago, I read an article that it was an article about gaslighting and explaining gaslighting from their situation. And, I was like, wow, I can name this person that did that to me, and I can name that person that did that to me, and they were all romantic relationships. And so, it was interesting to see that I picked up this letter that I had written. It was the breakup letter to clear my thoughts. Now, I'm pretty sure that the breakup already happened, but it was things that I didn't get a chance to say, or if I did say them, they were devalued. And it was twisted back to his feelings and not my feelings. And so in reading this letter, I was like, wow, he gaslighted me the entire relationship. And I didn't know it because I would be the one going back and apologizing profusely and trying to change things to make him happy. And if he
now, just for people who don't know, really quickly, sorry to interrupt you, but what is gaslighting for people who don't know?
So gaslighting, and that's, thank you for asking that, because I was going to kind of explain it, but not really in the definition terms. So gaslighting is a form of manipulation where the person alters your reality. You have no idea if what really happened. It's also where, for example, let's say he did something to hurt your feelings. It could be something as simple as he didn't take his socks up off of the floor and it made you upset, and you went to him and you talked to him about it, and next thing you know you're apologizing to him because it should be okay for him to leave his socks on the floor and your feelings aren't taken into consideration. It's a little broader than that, but it's, well, you're not taking my feelings into consideration because I want to leave my socks on the floor. And it's not to the point, it's not a compromise. There is no compromise in this. You are now in the wrong. You are the one that is wrong. You are the one that didn't take him into consideration. And your feelings and your opinion they don't exist. So that's what gaslighting is. It's a form of manipulation. So I noticed this, that a lot of relationships that I was in, it was, and I don't know how we got on the subject, I apologize, but a lot of the relationships that I was in, I could sit there and say, when you stayed out way too long and didn't call me, and you come home and there's no explanation, and it hurts my feelings because you were out until 3 in the morning. Why do you need to be out until 3 in the morning if you're in a relationship?
Right.
And you come home to me, and now I'm the bad guy. It gets all twisted on me, and I'm the bad guy, and now I'm kissing your butt because I don't want you to be mad and upset with me. And there was a lot of relationships where, and if I did something that wasn't wrong, I want to give an example, but it'll really call this person out. So I was in one of my years in college. During now I've been to college several times, so have fun picking this one out. So I was in one of my years of college, and the school where I was attending gave every student 2 cafeteria vouchers to take one of their professors to lunch. So it covered the cost of the student's lunch, and it covered the cost of the professor's lunch. And this was something that was done by the school. So I took one of my professors to lunch. In the college cafeteria, my professor happened to have a wife who was also a professor there, who I also knew her. She was one of my other professors, and his daughter would come to class with us a lot. She was like 5, and they homeschooled, and she was always in the classroom. It was common for this. And even if it wasn't common, see, here I am making excuses, right? I'm trying to validate why it was okay that I did this. Still, even all these years later, I'm still trying to validate this. So I took one of my professors to lunch. His wife came over, spoke. We, had just a small conversation, and she walked away. And so we were continuing our lunch, talking about mathematics of all things, okay? Really, it wasn't a very exciting conversation. So the guy that I was with at the time finds out about it. And Lord have mercy, World War III happened in our house that day. It was, well, not our house, his house. I wasn't living with him at the time, but it was, actually I never lived with this guy, but it was horrible because I took a college professor to lunch. It was, people don't do that in a relationship, that's wrong, that's blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, I'm the one that's apologizing profusely and trying to erase everything that I had done, like really go back in time and just not have that situation happen. And there was nothing wrong with what I did. That's gaslighting. And even today, you hear that I still tried to validate what I did. So even these years later, sometimes we still beat ourselves up for it. And writing that letter, the one that's going to be a part of our project, writing that letter was allowing me to finally say, hey, you don't get to do this to me anymore. My feelings are valid. And then at the end of the letter, I noticed that I went right back to him. So, and you've read it, so you see the pattern there. And that's just one example of still, even years later, sometimes you beat yourself up for it. I don't feel bad when I hurt his feelings, but I don't. At this point in my life, I don't feel bad that I've hurt his feelings at that time because it was trivial. It shouldn't have even happened. I shouldn't have hurt his feelings because of what I did. But there are still times I'm like, God, I was such a not nice person because I went to lunch with a professor.
Well, it's interesting. What you're talking about is kind of really similar in a lot of ways to a situation I've recently gone through. Is life is a spiral, and we go through events, and then it spirals around, and we revisit those same events time after time after time after time until we get to the point where we realize we've let it go. And I don't think, a lot of people talk about, well, just let it go. I don't think it's all about, well, I'm just going to let this go now. It's not that easy. You might let as much of it go as you're capable of letting go at each time. But we do, all of us do. We spiral back around and kind of in some way or other revisit those same situations over and over again until it's finally gone. And when we stop, reacting at all in any way, then we know we've let it go. But, those kinds of signs. And did you see indications that would have created a huge ordeal with you going to a professor or going to lunch with a professor? Did that kind of catch you completely off guard, or do you realize there might have been some signs there?
That really completely caught me off guard. That one really caught me off guard. There were signs of other types of situations that I went through with him. Absolutely other signs, but that one was really mind-blowing. And this was an on-again, off-again relationship for about 3 years. And I was coming from a place of rejection, if you will, an ended relationship that left me not loving myself enough. And so I went into a relationship with this particular guy, really not loving myself enough. There were signs that I ignored that were indicative of just the craziness that we were going to go through. But as far as that particular situation, that floored me because he was in a band. I totally am calling this guy out. He was in a band. So, we were spending a lot of time in bars while his band would play. So you would think that, it was an interesting relationship. I learned a lot from that relationship. I really did. But there were several signs of other things, but.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't realize that just because there's a sign of something, it relates to everything else in their life. I know I had a early on relationship that there were signs, there were signs that this person was going to be abusive when I first met them. And I ignored those signs. I ignored the, getting mad and throwing things or kicking something. I ignored the, coming in the house and kicking an animal, which is something today I would have kicked him harder than he kicked the dog. But I still ignored those signs. And then when he started hitting me, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I should have seen this coming. We do. We all ignore signs. We all do. And sometimes we don't interpret them correctly. One of the things that, is really someone close to me has mentioned recently is she had seen signs that maybe there was an issue with this particular individual, but she was off base with how she interpreted those things. There was a situation with a friend of a family member who has been known to be moody and depressed and anxious and all of these things, and everyone around this person was, she's going through a lot right now. She has a son who is a special needs kid. She's got a daughter who is also a special needs kid. So she's got 2 special needs kids under the age of 7, and she's going through a lot. So people were saying, maybe you need to go to a doctor and get something that will calm you down. Whatever it is, go to a doctor, talk to them because you're really, really depressed and you're really freaking us out. And what everyone missed was her alcoholism. The reason she was depressed is because she's an alcoholic. And she's got 2 special needs kids, and she drinks from the time she gets up in the morning until the time she goes to bed at night. And everyone missed it because she had been drinking for so long, no one realized she was drinking. And when you get to that level of alcoholism where people just think that your drunk self is how you are, you're very, very close to the edge. And what happened is she ended up in the hospital with pancreatitis. And this is a woman who has not yet hit 30 years old. And it has become a life-threatening thing. So sometimes when we think we're interpreting a sign, when we think we know what's going on, we need to take another look. In this case, it would have made a huge difference in this young woman's life, in the life of her kids, actually. But we miss things all the time, and then we feel blindsided when they are in the light, and we can no longer deny those signs in that manner. That was a really, really unfortunate, very, very, very recent thing that I've become aware of. And it is really, and we talked about it, I talked about it over this last weekend with various people, how everyone missed those signs. Everyone knew something was wrong, but what was really wrong had nothing to do with what they were thinking was wrong. So be careful how you interpret signs. Sometimes, and I've seen it go the other way too, where people think the worst. And rather than saying, hey, I don't understand this, or hey, how did this happen, or hey, what's going on here, they take the worst. They interpret it the worst possible way, and then they're often running with thinking the absolute worst about someone. And that's completely off base too. So it can go both ways. It can go where we miss things that we should have seen that were really good, or we interpret things as being really bad when they really weren't. That's a really common thing, is people see things, and really and truly, none of us really know what's going on in anyone else's head. As much as I joke about, people that I am close to, I have a tendency of kind of really knowing what's going on in their heads. But as much as I joke about that, really none of us know what's really going on in somebody else's head. None of us really know what's going on in someone else's life. So when you're looking at someone who seems to be acting out of character, maybe it's time to look a little bit deeper. Things are not always as they appear to be. So how do you know when it's time to walk away?
With one of my ex-husbands, yes, that's exactly what I meant. With one of my ex-husbands, I used my mom's ring for my wedding band. Actually, it may have been my grandmother's. It was my grandmother's. And that was a huge sign I shouldn't have married the man in the first place. But at the end of the relationship, at the end of what I had thought was the end of the relationship, I still was wearing the wedding band. And then we decided to try one more go-around, and it was about a year long for one more go-around, because I really was being gaslighted and really give it my all, and that I owed it to him to to really try everything that we can to make it work. And it was really, I was the only one putting in the effort. He was just afraid to be out on his own. So he liked my money more than anything. And when we finally, that was the last attempt, and we went our separate ways, I knew it was time when the ring didn't feel right on my hand anymore. I didn't want it on my finger anymore. And I even took it off and would leave it on the counter because it wouldn't fall down my drain. So I wasn't concerned about losing it down the sink or whatnot, but I would leave it in my bathroom. And that's really when I knew, was when it just didn't feel right on my hand. And then I finally gave it back to my mom. So that was a huge indication for me. And I know that sounds weird because it's a material way, but it was. The ring just was a burden on my finger. And that's when I knew I
get that.
Every possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely understand that one. I think It's different with everyone, but yeah, that's actually really common that you just feel like there's a certain piece of jewelry you just can't wear anymore. I know in my mind, an entire industry has sprung up around women who have jewelry they just cannot wear anymore. If you've ever seen those commercials for "We'll Buy Your Gold," you see
exactly.
the commercials where the women come in and they're dumping out all this gold jewelry. I'm like, yeah, that was from boyfriend 1, that was from husband 2. That was, that's what I think every time I see those commercials, because we do get to a point where you just you're over it. You just kind of outgrow that situation. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, it happens most often with a romantic relationship where it's just, you just can't do it anymore. Sometimes it happens with friendships too, but usually those, nope, I can't do this anymore is usually with a romantic relationship, which I find really funny. And then we have, there are situations, there are people, I have several friends who are friends with their exes. And it turns out they were better friends than they were in a romantic relationship. So that's kind of probably a topic for another show. But, yeah, the ring thing is really, really, really common. And what I personally identify with strongly.
Well, you had mentioned the friends. Yes, no.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, you had mentioned that it happens with friends too, and I think with friends, it kind of just fades away. There's not necessarily
usually
this blow up, like you might go over to their house and hang out again, but it might be a couple months before you do it, and eventually it's been years and you haven't seen these people anymore. So I think, and that could be because they're not. Most people don't see their friends every day. And I'm not talking like that best one that you have that lives next door to you or whatever. My best friend none of my best friends live in the same city as me. Even the one I have out in the country, I still have to go out to drive to see her. So it's,
right.
I don't get to see my friends all the time. I'm not with my friends like I am with a romantic.
Right.
Fades away, just kind of disappears with friends, whereas a romantic partner, you have to walk away and not it does fade out, but you're still in the same house or most of the time you're in the same house when you start to see that fading of the relationship, like this relationship's not going to work. You see the progression to coming towards the end of it, but at the end of it you have to completely walk away. You have to.
Right.
If you go back, you're going to get stuck, right? That's why we go through these cycles of this was an on-again, off-again relationship because you ended it, and it's like, oh, well, let's try to be friends, and bam, you're right back into it. Gosh, darn it, now you got to end it again, and you go through this vicious cycle. Whereas with friends, it's a lot easier to make excuses not to see them, and, life gets busy, and it's easier to just have that relationship fade than have it come to like a dramatic end.
Right. And sometimes, though, it does happen in a very dramatic way. Sometimes people become unstable. I've actually had that recently as well, where someone I was once very, very close to all of a sudden became unstable, and that was like, okay, gotta go. But, I have friends that I have been friends with for 30 years, which is really frightening if you think about it. That I've known someone for 30 years. But, and there have been times during our friendship. We were roommates at one time, so I did see her every day. And, I'm her daughter's godmother. And, we were very, very, very close. And then, our paths kind of separated, and we sort of went our separate ways. And there really wasn't ever a huge blow up. We just kind of fell out of each other's lives. And then, years go by, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, I remember you, and we're, best buddies again. So I think sometimes with friends, it's kind of an easier, free-flowing relationship than it is with a romantic relationship, too. It's sort of, you're here, you're not, you're here, you're not, I love you either way. Oh, look, there you are again.
Right.
And I know that one particular friend that I've had for 30 years, we laugh about that. It's like, oh yeah. This was the period of my life where you weren't there. Here, let me tell you what went on. And we have had those conversations. Back in 1998 when but it was. It's always, we've never had that I never want to speak to you again thing.
Right.
It's always been, you're here, you're not, okay, either way. But,
exactly.
yeah, those romantic relationships, though, are the ones that really, really hurt us. It's those that really, I shared my heart, my soul, and my body with you. What do you mean, you're going to treat me this way? And it's, I think, a deeper betrayal. Even in relationship to the friend that I recently had that just kind of went unstable and, started lashing out at the world, even that is not as painful as a romantic relationship where that similar thing happens. It's
right.
just a very, it's just a deeper cut, if you will. But, we've talked a lot about friends and romantic relationships. I kind of want to go back to business a little bit here, because sometimes, and I've had multiple businesses, as everybody knows, through the years, and sometimes you can have a business relationship that you have to walk away from. And when I was doing a lot of coaching, I would have people come to me with these kinds of things all the time. It's like, I started a business. We were in high school. We held the business through college. I'm, now looking at 30. I don't want to be in business with this moron anymore. And it's sort of a more difficult thing, really, because you've got your finances involved with someone else. So I know one business relationship I had a business partner for a very long time. And there were signs very early on that he was horrible with money. And early on, I thought, well, the business is just getting going. He's probably struggling. He's got a house and a mortgage and a wife, and, I'll cut him some slack. But those signs they kept getting bigger signs and bigger signs and bigger signs. And the next thing I know, I'm served with papers because I'm his business partner. And he wasn't paying his personal bills, but I was his legal business partner, so they were coming after me for his personal financial mess.
Oh, my word.
And now I didn't end up getting pulled into that because it was his personal mess and not business mess. But still, a couple of companies tried to sue me for his business stuff or for his personal stuff. And my attorney said, okay, how long does this go back? And we'd been business partners for like 12 years at that point. I knew within the first 6 months he had a problem with money. And I ignored that sign. And it got bigger, and it got bigger, and it got bigger. And I've learned that lesson. But my attorney, when he was helping me get out of all of this lawsuit stuff, he said, this goes back to, you knew this man had an issue with money 6 months into the business, and you went ahead with it anyway. And he kind of read me the riot act, because I did know, and I did know better, and I did do it anyway. And it was just that sometimes in business we get caught up in this is going to be great, this is going to be fabulous, this is going to be amazing. We get caught up in the dreams. We get caught up in the excitement of doing a new venture, and we want to see that everything is going to go like clockwork. And even when there are signs that there's trouble that we need to address, there's something we need to look at, we are so caught up in that what can be that we choose to ignore them. And I did that. And that was really, really a horrible, horrible end to what was a very lucrative business at one time. And it was just because my business partner couldn't handle money. And I'm not saying he was, bad with balancing his checkbook. I'm saying he was committing credit fraud. He
wow.
was really breaking multiple laws, not handling his business, because what he would do is he would make up numbers to refinance his house when he couldn't pay the mortgage.
Oh, my word.
So he would lie on his applications, or he would apply for credit cards using different family members' information, different family members that had passed away, their information. I mean, there was, once it unraveled, his world unraveled big time, and it was really, really awful to watch, because 12 years being in business with this guy, we'd become friends. You know, I knew his family.
Right.
You know, this was a really devastating thing for me to sit back and watch. And for a long time, I kicked myself for missing those early signs. I felt like his kid, he'd had kids during that 12 years, his kids wouldn't be losing their home had I not gone into business with him. I took all of that responsibility away from him and put it on myself. It was somehow my fault that he couldn't handle money. And through that whole experience, I learned that's a crock. You know, we each are masters of our own lives, and you can't fix other people. But when you see those early signs, you do need to speak up and say, hey, this is something we need to address. If you have a problem in this area, let's fix it now. It would have been so much better for me to have said, hey, I know we've just started this business, but it's looking like you're having trouble with handling money in your personal life. Why don't we find someone that can come in and talk to both of us about finances? That is how I should have handled it. And I know that now looking back, but like I said, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. So I wanted to tell that story because I have a hunch that someone listening is in a business situation with someone who has that issue and they are struggling with it. So it's amazing how many times we say stuff on this show that weeks later someone listens to the show and either emails me or messages me on social media saying, that show, you said exactly what I needed to hear, or Lisa said exactly what I needed to hear. So when I feel like a story relates to what we're talking about, I always share those. So that's why we took that left turn.
Just to let you know, I don't have a problem with money like that. Just to let you know.
No. But I see numbers. You do a show. You see the callers on the left-hand side.
Yes.
Yeah, and I see a couple of numbers there that I do recognize. So first off, thank you for tuning in. I know you guys don't have questions, or I would answer your call, but I know who you guys are, and I know you're just listening. But so no, that's something that really, really could have been disastrous for me. And fortunately, the way the laws in the state this took place are written, a business partner could not be held responsible for the partner's personal debts. But had it been the business debt, had it been the business debt, it would have been an entirely different story. So, pay attention to signs. And really there's no one area that's more important than another. We've talked about friends. We've talked about romantic relationships. We talked about business relationships. All of these areas are really important. If you're here's something that's recently happened to somebody I'm sort of close to. Recently, a person called me and said, hey, what do you think about this? Because I'm one of those people that my friends call and say, hey, what do you think about this? All the time. It happens all the time. And this conversation was every time I try to conduct business with this one individual, it falls through. Either I get called away or they get called away or they have the wrong location down or they set an appointment with me, and I'm there, and they're not, and this happens every time I try to reach out to this person and conduct business with them. What do you think? And I said, I think the universe is trying to save you from something you don't see. Because if you're trying to force something to happen and things keep happening that prevent that from happening, that is really a huge sign. You need to take a step back and reevaluate why you really are trying to force that to happen. So many times in life, we all do this. We take ourselves down the scenic route. You know, we kind of loop around and take wrong turns and wonder why it didn't work out. And eventually we get back where we're supposed to be. But if you're one of those people who keeps trying to force something to happen and it's just not happening, notice the sign and stop. You will ultimately save yourself a lot.
Absolutely. I've just recently gone through that situation myself. I was presented an opportunity that would be a great opportunity if there was room on my plate to take on this opportunity. And I'm still kind of bouncing back and forth with I try to contact the person, they aren't available. They try to contact me, I'm not available. So really, right now, it might not be, actually I know it's not the right time, but that doesn't mean that I can't keep it back in a back corner for when some things do start to lift off of my plate, because this would be an amazing business opportunity, and it would be part of what I already do. It wouldn't be an extension or a completely different avenue. It would fall in line with what I do, or what I think I do anyway. So it's not the right opportunity yet. I just can't take that on yet, but that doesn't mean that maybe in the future it's not a possibility. So sometimes you have to judge that too. Like, put that guy's business card at the back of your file, and when you roll around to it again in 6 months, maybe then it'll be a better time for you. Or sit down and evaluate, because it could just be toxic. It could be something you don't want to get involved in.
Right. And, do some soul searching. Take a step back and look at it as an independent observer, like a neutral. When you're having those kinds of situations, really take a step back and look at it, not with all of your expectations of how great it could be or your expectations of how horrible it could be. Just sit back and without any expectations at all, look at the situation, and you'll know if that's something that, the timing's just a little off, we'll do this later, or if it's something that is screaming at you, run far, fast, run away. Because if you do that, if you do take a step back and let go of your expectations, you will see it very clearly. It takes a little practice, but you will get there. It's always interesting to me when those things happen in my own life. It always makes me wonder what the lesson is. And I always look at things and opportunities and experiences as, where is the lesson? What am I supposed to be learning here? Sometimes, for me personally, it's been a lesson of, that was the right decision that I made, and this doesn't feel any better than that other situation did. So, yes, I'm on the right track. Other times it's, oh, hey, I totally missed the boat on that one. Here's my second chance. I'm going to go for it now. Only you can figure out what's right for you. But, just like any other sign that we're talking about, whether it's a friend or a romantic relationship or a business or something entirely different, even a school situation, choosing a school. I've seen so many kids getting ready to go to college, and they've got like 5 colleges that they're interested in attending. Really guide yourself, your inner self, to what is the highest and best place for you to be. What is the highest and best path for you to be on? And if you listen to your inner self, it's not going to guide you wrong. But so many times we override our inner self, our inner dialogue, and we say, yeah, I know this local college would be a much better fit, but I want to go to Boston, or whatever it is. I've seen kids do that, and they last like a semester at the school they really wanted to attend, and they transfer back, or they drop out completely. And it's because we're looking at different things than what is right for us. We're looking at what is right for other people, or what is right for society, or what is right to get the prestige degree, or whatever it is, rather than what is really right for us. So that's just an extra area to look for signs. Is in every aspect of your life, really. So what do you think? Have we covered this topic?
I think we have.
We are running short on time here. We've got just under about 9 minutes or so left. So if you have any parting thoughts you'd like to leave people with, now is your time.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. I just just to really bring home the point, guys, notice those signs in every aspect of your life. Don't try to force things to happen. You will find life goes a lot easier when you let go of your expectations. That doesn't mean let go of your goals and your dreams and your vision for the future. It means letting go of trying to control every aspect of your life. Sometimes we get into control mode, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and we think we know better than the universe or God or whoever you want to, whatever name you want to use. And honestly, we don't. So if you are open to opportunities that feel right, and you find life gets easy and people and places and things magically appear in your life, that's on the right track. If everything you do in a certain direction seems like a struggle and seems like you're fighting an uphill battle, or you're trying to paddle upstream, any of those metaphors, take a step back and reevaluate, because it might be you've missed the signs that you needed to look for, that you needed to notice, or you've interpreted them incorrectly. So sometimes it's best just to walk away. That is our show. Thank you so much for listening. You guys have a beautiful, beautiful day. We will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.